Hello, and welcome back to Many Adventures Mini. This week I'm painting up the miniature that I got as part of the HeroForge giveaway that I started a few weeks ago. If you're interested, there's some videos on it back in the channel. You can find those. I don't intend to do these giveaways all that often because when I do them, I do prefer to have it be fully my expense and not on anything on the giveaway person, and I get it sent out to them free of charge. I'll buy the mini, I'll pay for shipping and everything. So I don't intend to do this too often, mostly just for special occasions, milestones, anniversaries of the channel, and things like that. So with that, let's go ahead and jump more into this. This particular miniature is a wizard girl, as described by the winner. She lives in a tower on a small island, and below the sea in a cave near that island, she bribed a black dragon into living in that area. She wears colors of violet and red and is blonde with pale skin. So this was the prompt that I was working with, trying to get this miniature painted. So let's go ahead and jump into it, and I'll show you how I painted this miniature with these guidelines. Alright, here is our before images for our female Wizard HeroForge miniature. I printed this on my Anycubic Photon S using a resin that's a mixture of Syria Gray and Syria Tenacious with a 4-to-1 mix, just to get a very durable working model. Here you can see I've prepared this very rocky looking base. It seemed to have kind of like that rocky British island kind of feeling to me, so that's kind of why I went with it there. But I go ahead and get everything primed up with my pale gray primer from Vallejo using my airbrush. And I just go ahead and get started by getting this ground color in, and just put the dark stone across the small stones and gravelish color going on down there, just to get that out of the way early so that I don't have to worry about it later, possibly scuffing up anything with the boots or shoes or whatnot later down the line. So I just get this out of the way early, and that just kind of helps with the work process. Next we go on to this alien purple color, and this is what I'm using as the base coat for the robes. So I just thinned it down and started applying it in thin coats all across here on the robes. This is just the beginning process. I'm trying to use a more traditional painting process with this miniature than just going with zenithal highlights and glazes or contrast paints like I have in the past. So I wanted to get a little bit back to my roots with this one and try and do my best to get a high quality result out of it. So I'm starting off just by getting everything nice and base coated, and I'm using nice thin paints and trying to layer them up to the opacity that I desire before moving on to working on highlights and whatnot. So that's all this first step really is I'm starting with my darkest colors and just putting them everywhere, and I will be building up highlights from these points so that the miniature will end up looking a lot brighter at the end and have a nice transition of light effects. So this does end up being a bit of a longer process. I believe I spent twice as long on this miniature as I do on most normal ones. And you can see here I'm using Dragon Red. Red is the accent color that I'm using for this miniature as per the prompt color requests that I got from the giveaway winner. So the way that this kind of ends up turning out is it looks like she's wearing a red dress with a purple robe on top of it with her purple hat. That's what we get for it. The majority of it and is just the effect that you end up with. I do color in this band around her wizard's hat red as well, just to definitely cement that this is the accent color going on here rather than the primary color. And again, it's just going over the area 3 or 4 times with thin coats just to get everything the right color that I want. This desert yellow color that I'm using is what I'm using as the base color for the hair so that I can get this blonde hair effect. This works great as just a normal base color for getting realistic looking blonde hair. So that's pretty much the quick and easy reason for why I use it. I also use it for like doing quick and easy ropes because it's a nice color for that. So you'll see that with like her rope belt as well. And this is the color I use. But again, I'm just using thin coats and getting a solid opaque layer on there, and between 2 to 4 coats usually to get everything to the particular coverage that I want and get as much saturation in there as I can manage. It's a pretty straightforward process at this point, really. It's basically like coloring in the lines at this point. It's just how good are you with your paintbrush, and have you thinned your paint enough, and all that sort of stuff. So we come in on the leather brown and just get the shoes. They're kind of these like flat style shoes, so not something I'm particularly familiar with personally, but works well enough. And I use this greeny gold to get the gold color in on this staff. I really like the Army Painter metallics because they do a really good job even when slightly thin. And I usually don't have to thin these much, if at all. And I get a nice even coat on anything that I'm putting the metallic on, and it looks fantastic. Just about every time. I rarely have to do much extra work with metallics. But you did see I also used the Wizard orb green color to get the orb on the staff done, and now I'm doing the base coat with this Barbarian flesh. I usually start with a darker flesh tone, but as it was clearly stated that she is a pale character, I decided to start with a slightly brighter flesh tone and work my way up from there and just see what I can work with. Got a little bit of hair in there on my camera. I'm working on fixing some of my camera angles, so hopefully that won't happen again, but we'll see. It probably will. So next, for my medium highlight on the purple robes, I'm using this Orc Blood color, and I've just thinned it down into almost like a glaze, and I'm just putting it on and then kind of feathering it out with my brush, wiping most of the excess paint off, having a slightly wet brush, and just blending that down into the darker colors. And this is definitely like a long process. You gotta let it dry, you gotta do several coats, but it ends up being nice and smooth and looking great as a transition. And it really just adds an extra pop of color and saturation to this robe, makes it look really nice. And this is exactly just like a patient work. And it's one of the reasons why you don't see me doing this all that often for a lot of my miniature work, because this is a lot slower. You get some great effects, but it's a lot slower. So I tend to really like the Zenithal method just because it does a lot of work for me. I don't have to do nearly as much. But if you mess up, you can end up with something like really flat looking. Whereas this, you put in extra time and you really can see the difference. It's a very like intentional thing, and the artist's own skill level really comes more to the forefront with it. Even here I'm showing you like using this pure red color as a highlight to the red. It's like it adds an immediate like pop and dimension to the clothing. And knowing where to put those highlights is the biggest learning curve with this style of miniature painting. Whereas it's not nearly as difficult when you're working with something like the airbrush Zenithal highlight method, because where those highlights are is already predetermined for you. You don't need to think about it. Which is useful and has its place, and is even like a great guide for learning this, how to do this yourself in a manual way. But there's definitely a difference to the methodologies. And you can see here I'm doing my next highlight as just mix a little bit of the Orc Blood with some matte white. Since I didn't have a brighter purple color, I use this just to get the brightest parts of the outfit. I'm trying not to overdo it, though I may overdone it just a little bit, but I really did like the effect that I got. Got a nice smooth transition and definitely made the cloak seem a lot brighter, which is what I was going for. I wanted this to definitely be like a darker purple robe, but I didn't want it to be a dark like paint job, because that would be like too flat, so I'm actually pretty happy with the way this came out. For the hair, I did the next highlight, which is just hitting the raised sections of the hair with some skeleton bone color. Just getting that on there. I'm not being too careful about blending that one in properly because I'm coming in here with my burnt umber wash, and I'm just trying to apply this very thinly and controlled. I don't want it to go anywhere it's not supposed to, so I get some solid coverage everywhere, and then I actually start soaking up and drying out and pulling out as much of that wash as I can. I also put it on the golden staff to give it kind of a more aged gold look. But the effect of the burnt umber wash with those two layers on the hair makes it so that they blend kind of naturally without me having to worry about it too much. But here I take the next step with the stones and I start dry brushing on a medium gray, and then for the area beneath the stones I actually go ahead and go in here with this oak brown to make it look more like a normal dirt rather than just pebbles and stones and whatnot. And there you can see I mixed a little bit of crystal blue with some barbarian flesh to get just a slightly bluish toned skin tone paint, which I'm using as a bit of a paint-in shadow color. It's a very subtle effect, but it gives a slight bluish tinge to the shadows in the skin, which is something that you can notice in natural skin tones. It's something that is frequently seen in different kind of art studies and whatnot. And I'm doing the same thing with this red, and I'm putting this in some raised areas and certain large areas of flesh that tend to become easily flushed so that you have this slight pinkish tinge to it, which really just adds a little extra element of realism to it. And then I'm coming back to the hair and brightening it up again with another highlight layer of skeleton bone, this time being a little bit more careful to be neat with it. And then I'm coming in here with this matte black and the mummy robes color. I'm using the mummy robes as the highest highlight, just the very highest bright point on the hair, just to definitely say this is blonde hair, and it really kind of works. I blend a little bit more with just a very slight amount of more watered down wash, and move on from there. Then I black in where the eyes are going to be with the dark black, the matte black color, and then I take a little bit of the Moni white. I do like to prefer to do the whites of the eyes with an off-white color, so that's why I use the Mummy white, and then a little bit more of the black to get the pupils in there, but it's a little bit difficult to see with how this is all set up. It's also difficult to see this. I'm using the scar tissue to paint the lips a slightly different pinkish color so that they stand out from the rest of the skin around them just a little bit more. This is a pretty subtle little effect, but it's something that you can see if you get in relatively close. And here you can see I'm also strategically applying small amounts of wash directly into the crevices in her hands. I don't want to be using the wash directly just covering the skin because I don't like the way that ends up looking when you do that. But I will strategically place it directly into crevices so that it doesn't cause any other issues and I can still get that effect. But next up here we're using a little bit of this jungle green to get the color of this orb settled, and I use a little bit of the mummy white to paint in some reflection lines so that it looks a little like glass and shiny a little bit. This isn't the best effect, this is still something that I'm working on, but it came out alright in this instance. And next I take a little bit of scenic glue here, apply it around the base below the rocks, trying to get as much coverage down there as I can, just get it tucked in there so that I get as much of this flocking to stick as I can. Just kind of sprinkle that around the base, tap it a little bit, get as much off as I can. And then here I get on and start trying to use my varnish, and I realized that I made a mistake and I had actually missed a couple steps on the rocks. So I kind of stopped, pulled out my black wash, hit the rocks trying to avoid the flock as much as possible. Let that dry, and then dry brushed it with a little bit of the skeleton bone to get a more natural rock effect. A pretty subtle thing, but I felt I needed to do it. And then just finish up the varnish, and here we go. This is the final step. I'm pretty happy with how this one turned out. Please forgive the slightly shaky turntable. It's kind of on its last legs and I need to replace it. But you can get the general gist seeing this. This is a great miniature that you can put on the tabletop, and it looks pretty good. It could definitely be better, but I'm pretty happy with how this one turned out. Alright, I hope you enjoyed watching that. I had a lot of fun painting this one and trying to put a little bit more extra effort into it than I do with some of my normal tabletop quality miniatures. So with that, if you enjoyed it, please give me a thumbs up. It helped out quite a bit. And if you liked this video and want to keep up to date with any future giveaways I might do, please subscribe and hit the bell icon so you get notified whenever any of my videos get posted. If you're interested in supporting me, there are links below to my Patreon page as well as my Etsy store, where you can support me either directly through Patreon or you can purchase some of the minis I occasionally put up on my Etsy store. If you want to get occasional news and some behind-the-scenes pictures I occasionally take, there's also a link to my Facebook page down below that you can go if you can give it a like and a follow, and you should see some of my stuff pop up in your Facebook feed every once in a while. And with that, I hope to see everybody here again next time.